Day 9 now of the federal government shutdown, and here's the top headlines that we know around it. Votes yesterday in the Senate again failed to move government funding bills forward, with Republicans unable to win Democratic support and negotiations largely held behind closed doors. Quiet, informal meetings are said to be ongoing, but no public breakthroughs have emerged. Meanwhile, some federal agencies are already scaling back. Nearly 3,400 IRS employees, or around 46% of its workforce, are being furloughed, with services impacted on tax services and call centers and agency operations. And federal cybersecurity and infrastructure security agencies have held its operations being severely curtailed, with only about 1/3 of the staff still active. It's not just Washington that's feeling the impact of the federal government shutdown. Here in Metro Atlanta, food banks, shelters, and community nonprofits are struggling to keep their doors open as well, just as more families turn to them for help. Let's talk more about it now, what this means for vulnerable neighborhoods in our community, and how long the organizations can hold out. Here's Sarah Saadian. She is the Senior Vice President for the National Council of Nonprofits. Sarah, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, so when Washington stops, nonprofits don't, right? They continue to go on, but their funding often does get affected by what's taking place up there in Washington. How quickly are you seeing some of the ripple effects from what's taking place right now?
Well, some nonprofits are immediately seeing harm, where more people in their community are seeking services and they don't have the resources for it. But we're also knowing that the longer the shutdown continues, the greater the harm to nonprofits and their ability to serve their community. They can't access the resources they need from the federal government, where they partner to provide services to the American people. It means that they'll have to cut back on services, maybe lay off staff, or even close their doors.
Tell us, how deeply are the local food banks and shelters and some of these service groups tied into federal dollars?
Well, many organizations partner with the federal government on a regular basis to provide services. Food banks is just one clear example, but there are many others. And the federal government needs nonprofits in order to help those communities get access to those resources. So when funding is cut off, you can see nonprofits across the spectrum of services provided to people be impacted.
Are there any programs out there or services that you would be more worried about if this shutdown drags on a little longer?
Yeah, I think most immediate on people's mind is access to food security. That's because the WIC program and the SNAP program that are funded by the federal government might be most impacted most immediately. But in the long term, we could see shelters impacted. We could see after-school programs. Nonprofits step up in lots of different ways in their community, and all of them will be impacted if they can't get access to federal funds.
Yeah. Sarah, is there a breaking point or a length of time that you see that's maybe a little bit more widespread when we start to see layoffs or even program suspensions?
Yeah, I think we'll start to see more impacts emerging starting about 2 weeks into the shutdown. And then after about 30 days, that's when nonprofits are going to start struggling to make payroll or meet their other expenses. We're worried that they might have to take out loans, which add costs to their budget that they weren't expecting. And at that point, nonprofits might be forced to cut back on the services they provide. They might have to reduce their staff or even close their doors to the people in their communities, which is ultimately really harmful to everyone who relies on nonprofits for essential services.
Yeah, I can imagine that. Is there anything that local donors or businesses or even volunteers can do to help out nonprofits and help them weather a storm like this?
Absolutely. Nonprofits could be working with foundations and receiving donations from their community, but there's no way to make up for the shortfall from the federal government. The only way to keep nonprofits whole and their ability to serve their community is if Congress comes together to reach a bipartisan agreement to reopen the government so nonprofits can continue this vital work.
Yeah. What advice would you give nonprofit leaders trying to balance compassion and the cash flow during the shutdown that clearly has no end at this point?
Absolutely. I think many nonprofits might be prepared for this. We've been encouraging them to look into their finances, to plan for a plan B in case they needed to fall back on other resources. But the longer that goes, the more impossible that task becomes, right? There's a lot that nonprofits can do to prepare, but if the shutdown continues for 30 days or 60 days, you could see irreparable harm to the nonprofit sector.
Sarah, have you heard anything or maybe seen something that would give you any hope that this thing will end soon?
I am hoping that Congress can come together to reach an agreement. It seems like there's room for negotiations here. I've been happy to see that there's a bipartisan group of senators who are working behind the scenes, as you mentioned, to try to hash out an agreement. Ultimately, it doesn't serve the American people to have the government shut down.
Yeah. When this thing is all said and done, what do you hope lawmakers take away about how critical some of these organizations are to keep going?
Absolutely. My hope is that the federal policymakers agree with the American people that nonprofits get it done. Nonprofits are incredibly important to our communities. They are stepping in during a time of crisis, but also to help meet everyday needs. Our communities can't thrive without nonprofits, and I'm hoping that policymakers see what happens when federal resources are shut off from them and their ability to serve their communities.
All right, Sarah Saadian, thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate your insight today.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, take care.